a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode number 212 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, January the 13th, 2024. My name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank everyone who tuned in last week for our episode with Rex Morgart. We talked about unopened and sealed packs, vintage, and vending machines. A lot of fun. You can check that out on the YouTube channel. MC Mondays is back this week on Monday, and tomorrow night, Josh Madigan of The Gong Show joins me for the weekly PWCC Hockey Auction Watch Party. Check out both those episodes if you'd like. We will be here. I'd like to ask you to join close to 500,000 people who've downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Android for quick comps and accurate prices for when you are pricing your cards at home or at card shows. They have management features. You can build, organize, and share your collections with your friends and find other collectors to follow using their social sharing features. Check out their Instagram account and please join me in supporting the great team they have and the innovation they're undertaking. Also, practice safe swaps. Veriswap is an app and middleman service that lets you securely trade cards through the mail. Every transaction up to $1 million in value is fully insured by their guarantee. Check them out on iOS and Android. They're offering $50 in free trade credit to anybody who adds 10 hockey cards to their account. You can also join me and Veriswap founder Raymond Lee every second Tuesday on Instagram Live for our Veriswap Trade Desk 10 to 12 minute little live episodes that we do. I'd like to shout out hobbynewsdaily.com. Check them out for daily content and podcasts and YouTube shows and articles. Really cool collaboration going on hobbynewsdaily.com. And of course, Leighton, Sheldon, and Just Collect. Unfortunately, Leighton will not be joining us today for the Vintage Spotlight. I'm disappointed. I know our guest is disappointed, but he'll hopefully be back next Saturday. Also want to let you all know you can buy and sell tag graded cards on ComC, and Tag's new Tag X grading service is a game changer. Pokemon, Lorcana, and other rounded corner TCG game cards are now eligible for grading. Visit taggrading.com if you value transparency and consistency in card grading. I want to thank all partners, sponsors, and of course, loyal viewers and listeners for your ongoing support. Coming up on 4 years of that support. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel or the podcast, please take a moment and do so. And as always tonight, your comments and your questions are in play. Let's get to it. Tonight's guest started in the hobby in 1983 at the age of 9 when he started buying packs of Topps baseball cards, which to this day is still his favorite design, and not a bad one. I like it too. He took a break from 1990 all the way until the pandemic in 2020, and he started his podcast in June of last year. His favorite players of all time are Willie McGee, Ricky Henderson, Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds, and Bob Sanders. And his favorite teams of all time are the St. Louis Cardinals, Las Vegas Raiders, and the Iowa Hawkeyes. He's originally from St. Louis, Missouri, currently hailing from Iowa City, Iowa. Let's bring him out. Dave Schwartz, welcome to Sports Cards Live. Dave, how are you doing tonight?
Good, Jeremy. It's great to see you. I'm a big fan of the show, your professionalism, your enthusiasm, and I'm excited to talk to you and your guests tonight, you and your audience tonight.
Well, thanks, Dave. I am enthused to have you on. I've told you I've been looking forward to this. I've been listening to your podcast since it started, and the way that I found out about you, Dave, was because you've been doing a service to the hobby on Instagram. It's got to be close to a year now, I'm guessing, where really every morning when you get up, you actually go out there and you gather all the podcasts that dropped in the hobby, and you do a story post on your Instagram saying, here are the hobby podcasts that have been dropped in the last 24 hours or so. You include mine on there. You include many more. And I got to tell you, I found a few podcasts that way. I think I've told you about a few podcasts to add to the list. You have a website where you share all the different podcast options and some YouTube channels as well. I want to hear your hobby history, but I got to start by asking you this, Dave. What made you start doing that in the first place?
Sure. So I have a fairly long commute to work each day. I spend about 2.5 to 3 hours a day in the car. And so I was already into the hobby for quite a while at that point, really enjoying content. That's how I learned the hobby when I got back into it, because the time when I left the first time, it was just cardboard, no grading, no drama, except for the, some of those old school dealers who would, rip off the kids. But otherwise, there was really no sorts of drama. So podcasts really helped me understand what I was doing. Not so much YouTube, because I wouldn't just sit down on the couch and watch it, but in the car, I was captive. I listened to it. But every now and then, a podcast would just sort of drift off into the atmosphere. It would be gone. And made me think that people so many of the podcasters out there are just doing it because they enjoy it. It's a hobby. And the best kind of feedback we can give them is our time, our ears, our attention, because they're not making any money on it. And if somebody feels like they're wasting their time, like they're talking to nobody, of course they're going to stop. And of course they're going to go away. So sort of two reasons why I did it. One was sort of selfish, because I didn't want people to keep going away. I needed that company on my commute, but also just as a way of trying to say thank you, as a way of trying to say that there are people out here who are listening to you. There are people out here who are trying to support what you're doing. And the least that I could do is take 3 minutes every morning and jump onto Instagram, which is free, and just say, hey, here are 2 or 5 or 10 hobby podcasts that have been updated over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I first saw you do that and you had Sports Cards Live on there, I was very flattered and very, very grateful. And I still am. I think it's a wonderful thing that you do. So, everybody, if you're watching this and you don't know Dave Schwartz, you don't know Iowa Dave, the Shallow End podcast, you have to be following him on Instagram. And then you can be brought up to speed every day on what podcasts have dropped. Maybe you'll find some new ones as well. And then you started your own podcast, which I think was maybe inevitable. Before we get into that, though, let's just talk a bit about your history. I mentioned in the intro that you got into the hobby in 1990. You took a break, though, for a while. And then I said you didn't come back until the pandemic, but that was a bit of a white lie. You dipped your toes back in 2003. So just take us quickly through that progression.
Sure. So I got in 83 and I got out in 90. And I don't remember why I got in, other than I've always been a baseball fan, always been a sports card fan, a collector of things, right? And in 83, I just know that's when I started collecting. And I love and helped that it was such a gorgeous design on Topps Baseball that year. Growing up in a town like St. Louis, where baseball is a religion, those are the types of cards that I wanted to collect that year. Plus, my favorite player growing up at that youngest age was Willie McGee. Everyone thinks that when you're from St. Louis and you're from that era that it's Ozzie Smith, but he was more like the national guy. If you were from St. Louis, you knew that the guy was Willie McGee. And so his rookie card was in 83. Always chased it, never got it, and just collected straight through to 90. And, had rows and rows and boxes full of commons and some pretty good cards as well, good cards for that era. 1990, I don't think it's a coincidence. That's when I turned 16 and got a car. Got a job that, required things like I could not put gas in my car, that sort of thing. And I just sort of got distracted. I know that I'm pretty sure 1990 is when I got out, because the last big chase card that I remember were Frank Thomas rookies. And so those were 1990. And I just kind of moved on. Then I went to college and grad school and that sort of thing. And then in 2003, I dabbled a little bit, because that was when I started to discover eBay. And I didn't discover eBay for cards. I discovered eBay for knickknacks and other things, and big boxes of used golf balls, because at the time I was playing golf. And so I can get them cheap there. And I stumbled across cards again and realized that I never stopped enjoying them. I just stopped being a part of the hobby because the other parts of life took over. And so I actually bought a couple of cards while I was in that era of 2003. One was a 94 A-Rod SP foil. Bought it raw, and I'd never seen cards that were that shiny before. I wasn't aware of refractors. It is clear that cards had taken a technological leap, right? I was fascinated, but then also vintage. And so I bought like a 68 or a 69 Pete Rose. I liked Pete Rose when I was growing up as well. So I bought one of those raw. Neither one cost me a whole lot of money. I think maybe the A-Rod was $15-20, and that felt like too much. But nonetheless, that was it. I was gone again. 2005, again, life takes over, right? I get married in 2000. No, I'm sorry. Sorry, honey. Got married in 2002. Kid comes along in 2005. First one, first of three. 2007 comes another kid. 2010 comes kid number 3. And while we're, I don't know, just in the throes of raising kids, I again get on eBay. And this time I become enamored. This is around 2011, 2012. I become really enamored with the 53 top Satchel Paige, thinking, okay, if I'm going to get back in, this is going to be the card that I want. But nonetheless, it just wasn't the right time. You know, when you've got 3 kids who are, you know, age 5 or under, there are other places that you need to be putting your money when that's not your career. Like, what if you're not going to be flipping, if you're not going to be opening a shop, if you're not going to be at shows, this is not the time to be wading back into that area. But finally, you know, COVID happens, and one weekend go back to St. Louis where my dad still lives, and my parents, they never touched my cards while I was gone for 2.5 to 3 decades. They never bothered them. They were still in the right side of my childhood room in the closet in the exact same order, in the exact same stacks as where I had left them almost 30 years before. And so I went back and I thought, maybe, you know, I knew that cards were picking up steam. You know, there were articles on them about ESPN. It was sort of, so it was back into my brain. And I probably had about 30 to 40,000 cards. And we drove down there, visited my dad, and on the way back, loaded them all up into the back of our car and then drove back and sold most of them. Recycled a bunch of 1987, 88 Topps cardboard that wouldn't even be worth ComC, right? Ended up recycling a bunch. And graded about 12. And so much of my good fortune in this hobby since I've been back has been luck. And by pure luck, I sent about 12 to 15 cards to PSA right before the glut happened, right before. And so I got them back, I don't know, not that long, 6-8 weeks. It was great, right? And I sold them off, and I couldn't believe how much they were going for at this point, right? Like, this was what became the boom. I didn't know that. I just thought, hey, what a great hobby. And I'm selling cards off like crazy. And I sell them all off except for a couple that I knew wouldn't get anything that belonged to old family, that sort of thing. Like my dad's old 57 Red Shandies. I'm not going to sell that, right? But the last card of mine from my childhood that I did not sell was the 1991 Michael Jordan Upper Deck, the baseball card, where he's wearing the White Sox uniform. It's like his baseball XRC is what I like to call it. And I got a PSA 10 on it. So now I have a Michael Jordan PSA 10 card during the boom. I said to my wife, do you mind if I just sell this one, but keep the funds just to kind of get back involved? And she's like, I don't care. She's supportive. She goes, sure, go ahead. Because up until that point, so much of what I had sold went to grocery money and other bills, and it was great. So she didn't care if I kept one. The card ended up selling for $700-800, right? And so there we go. That was my treasure chest. And the first card I bought when I was back into the hobby was an Anthony Edwards Prism base rookie. Probably for about 5 times what it would cost now. But I was back in. And so from that moment on, I've been back in the hobby.
All right. Well, it's a nice timeline. And the one thing I want to go back, you said this a few minutes ago now, was, you know, Willie McGee was your favorite player to collect, 83 Topps. And I'm thinking to myself, I would have loved to be in the schoolyard with you, because I could have traded you my Willie McGee's for Tony Gwynn's and Ryan Sandberg's and Wade Boggs, and I might have come out a little bit ahead. Were you also chasing those key rookie cards back then, or didn't even know who they were back then?
Not right away, but pretty soon. I got pretty involved. I subscribed to Beckett. We had in St. Louis, there were 3 or 4 or 5 card shops that were 15 minutes away that my parents would drive me to on the weekends. And so I got pretty involved with it. So when I went back and got the collection out of my dad's house in 2020, cards, I had kept a lot of my cards already in top loaders. So I was already preserving them. And so there were Boggs, there were, like you said, Sandbergs and Tony Gwynn's and Canseco's and McGuire's and 74 Dave Winfield's, those types of cards up through the 89 Ken Griffey Jr. and some Frank Thomas. And so, yeah, I recognize, I even back then, I sort of had on the brain that old thinking of, oh man, I'm going to be rich someday, right? And so I definitely pursued cards that I perceived would be worth something. Kirby Puckett, Eric Davis, those types of players. And I kept them, thankfully, I kept them in top loaders. And I only got maybe 2 or 3 PSA 10s out of those 15 cards that I would submit 30 years later. But yeah, I'm still grateful that I had the sense, 3 decades ago to put them in.
I was one of those. I was one of those rare kids in the 80s also that kept my card. They were my precious belongings, and I kept them in as good a condition as I could before sleeves and top loaders, and just nice and square in a box on the floor in my closet. Good memories, Dave. We have some similar history there. Let's say hello to we got Jake Dahl with us. Jake, what is going on? 86 collectibles. Thank God it's Saturday. There we go, contender. That comment is just too funny. JP says, yeah, good warming up down there. Yeah, it is cold here, and I did get an alert that there could be power outages here in Calgary tonight. So hopefully I don't get kicked off the show. Todd McDonald, what is going on? Dan's Vintage, looking forward to learning some more budget ideas. Peeps, good evening. Cardboard Corner. Yes, JP, hopefully no Alberta power outage. Hello to Joe Sacco. Mike is in the house. Contender says Ricky Henderson's stealing record will never, ever be broken. Bob Hosta, we're going to be talking about Bob because he is your most recent guest on your podcast, an episode I really enjoyed. We'll be talking about that soon. Bob, welcome to the show. Chris Olivo, welcome to the show as well. Diversity for my collection. Yes, sir. Mookie Chilson says attention is a valuable commodity. Both these guys worthy of my time. Thank you, Mookie Chilson. He said that when he was talking about when you were talking about, Dave, how your people are listening to podcasts and consuming content. Good evening, Professor Tom Newman. Good to see you, Jeff McMahon. Good to see you, contender. Listen, this question is an episode all in of itself, but I'm going to ask you, Dave. How do you define vintage cards? Where is the cutoff for you? If you have a kind of quick answer to that.
I just think 1979, 1980, right around there. And that's not my idea. I think baseball card collector Mike from I forget the name of his show, but he takes it from end of World War II, so about 48 through 79, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I go till 89 personally. We can have a chat offline. I'll try and bring you over to the dark side on that one for sure. Chris C, good evening to you. 90s collector. What's happening? Brett S, good evening. Jeremy, Mr. Foul 5-ball, thank you for being here. Yes, good day, gents. And Hobby Champs is here. All right, so Dave, let's talk about we're going to talk about more what you collect a little bit later, but I want to talk about your podcast because with Dave Schwartz, with Iowa Dave Sports Cards, we can get so much ideas and thoughts out of him by talking about the episodes that he's done, because you have, first of all, his podcast, it's must listen. I feel it's must listen for anybody, because whether you hobby in the shallow end or you hobby in the middle or the deep or the extreme deep end, there are some concepts that come out of his episodes that you can apply to any price point, any approach. So I want to talk about it, Dave. And, I want to first talk about, how did you start? What was you were telling everybody about all the other podcasts out there in the hobby, and then you started. And I was really happy to see that you were going to start. Now we're going to get to hear the voice behind the account, learn who is Iowa Dave. But tell exactly, what was that aha moment? When and why did you start? And what kind of who were you encouraged by?
Sure. So I actually had a podcast briefly, not sports related, around 2012, 2013, that was related to my work. And it only lasted 20 episodes or so. So I had some small bit of experience in the appreciation of podcasts. Last April or May or so, last March is when I started every morning putting that list out there on Instagram. Sometime around April, May, I got an instant message over Instagram from Rob Gerard, and he was asking me something sort of innocent about, what do you actually listen to, right? What kind of podcasts are you into and why? And I think he thought I was going to give him a short little list and a short little answer, and that was going to be it. And instead, I think I probably made him regret the question that I sort of joked that way, because I sent him a book back, right? Multiple messages saying, here are 4 or 5 things that I look for. Here's why I think that they're important. And I was sort of going back on my previous history of doing this, things that I listened to on my own, things that I liked, that I didn't like, things that were helpful in this hobby, things that were not, what turned me off, what turned me on. And he writes back one sentence, do you want a podcast? And then we started talking a little bit. My first response was, no, I don't. I don't know how mine would be any different or any better than anyone else's. I listened to yours. There were probably about half dozen others that I would listen to religiously, and then some others that I would just supplement based on topic, right? And then I said, well, let me get back to you. Let me think about it. Let me see if there's something that I could do that would be different or that would be helpful, or that there'd be some sort of a niche that I could feel, but that would feel organic to me, because I don't want to force something, right? And then about a week later, as I'm driving into work where I do all my thinking, it just sort of popped into my head that there aren't a whole lot of podcasts up there that focus explicitly on collectors like myself, who are kind of like low-end collectors. And, I might have a couple of cards at the time that were maybe 3 figures, but most of the time, if a card was getting over $40, I had to really think about whether this is a purchase that I wanted to make or needed to make. And I didn't know if this was going to be like a long-term successful type of podcast. I don't know how one even determines the word successful, but I thought that's it. I'm in the shallow end, and I right away had the title, and I messaged him and I said, okay, here's my idea. A piece about the shallow end, called The Shallow End, for collectors who are on a budget. And he wrote back and said, sounds great. I love it. Maybe in about a month, after you've had some time to develop some stuff, do a test episode. Let's do it. And the rest is history.
So I'm sorry. Why was it let's do it?
Why did I say, why? Oh, thank you. Yes, of course. Because he was looking to expand. So, he was part of that group called the Wolf Pack. So the Wolf Pack was him, Cousins Collectibles, the Crosstown Cardboard guys, Big Ken from Sports Card Lessons, and some other guy named Dave, who I don't know, who does not have a podcast. And he wanted to sort of create some affiliate shows on the Wolfpack network. So he had his show, Ken had his show, the other guys had their shows, and he brought in Collect What You Love, and brought in me to do these sort of new shows. And I think he was going to bring in other shows past that, but that just sort of fell through. But Erica from Collect What You Love and I did shows. She did hers on a limited run, I think 4 to 8 episodes, and mine just sort of kept going. And although his dream of almost a network of podcasts didn't happen, mine never ended. And even after his troubles came and went, I took my podcast off the Wolfpack network and have been doing it myself ever since.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. So that makes sense. Okay, so let's get into to some of the topics that you've gotten into, because again, this is where there's good stuff. So I want to talk about an episode you did with Paul Hickey, and his podcast is called Sports Card Strategy. He's as you mentioned in your episode with him, he is all about sports cards as a way to make money. And a lot of people don't like that approach. And a lot of people, but you had a great episode with him. I just want to get your thoughts on that episode with Paul, and sort of, some of the key points, the key ideas that came out of that for you. Because I know your intro to that episode, you are very excited about this episode. You thought it was really good. And I want to get from you, what were some of the key takeaways you had?
Absolutely. And so Paul Hickey has become a friend of mine in the hobby. And they talk about opposites attract. He's somebody who is all about making money in the hobby. I'm all about just trying to have fun in the hobby. But what I love so much about Paul is that there's nothing fake about him. He's not an investor who's going to say, okay, I'm going to embed myself with the collectors now and pretend that I'm a collector. He comes right out and says, no, I'm here to make some money. Here's how I'm going to help you. But I wanted to bring someone different onto the show. And so we had met at National last year. We had talked online as well. And so we just talked about things that we should be thinking about, even if we are just collectors, such as like the right time of the year to sell, right time of a season to sell, when not to sell. But the thing that really blew me away, the thing about that episode that almost took my breath away, is when he said, as you start thinking about collecting, as you have this card that you really want, ask yourself, once you've got it, then what? And it's just 2 words, right? It's then what or now what? And I didn't know how to answer him, but I had felt that before. This idea of this chase, like you're going after this card, you've got to have this card, right? And then you finally get it, and you're like, all right, well, got it.
Yeah.
On to the next one, right? On to the next one. And a lot of times the interviews, I hope other people will take something from it and they can help, influence their collecting, shape their hobby in some way. But that one really kind of wrecked me for a couple of weeks, where I actually didn't buy for a couple of weeks because I was so much in my head about it. Like, okay, well, I really want to get this Ohtani, or I want to get this Bo Jackson. And then what does that mean once I do? And should I even collect anything? Should I just quit the hobby? Because what does it matter? If the whole goal is to get a card, and then once you get it, you're fine, and you move on to the next card, right? What's the point? And because of that, it really forced me to take a closer look at my collection, to not buy so spontaneously, although I still do. I mean, impulse is part of this hobby, right? Sometimes we all just hit buy, and then it comes, you're like, oh, that was dumb. Or you get it and you think, well, that was great. I'm glad I did that. But he did help me become more intentional with what I'm doing. And since that moment, I've been able to shape my PC in a way that I hadn't really thought about before. And so it kind of tells me that even people who come from the hobby from a different perspective than you do, and certainly he and I are on polar opposite sides of what sports cards are all about. But if you just open your mind and listen to somebody whose philosophy you might not identify with, you can still learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah. I love your open-mindedness to it. And I met Paul at the Mint Collective, whether it was last year or the year before. Really nice guy. And,
Oh, nice.
and like you, I do admire that he's just doing what he's doing, and he's plugging away and moving forward with it. And he's a very nice guy, very nice, lots of energy, and he loves the hobby for what it is and for how he approaches it. But I love the then what question. Now, you did another episode where you talk about the 6 questions. This is your framework that you've built for yourself, Dave, where you have 6 questions that you ask yourself before you're about to buy a card. And we're not going to go to that episode yet. But one of those questions, I think it's question 4, is then what? So, and I think it's a really important question to ask, because as collectors who we can buy we can online shop anytime we want. There's no, the stores never close in this hobby. So we chase cards, we lust for them, we see them, they get listed on a marketplace, we wait for the final few seconds, we make our bids along the way, we maybe bid at the end, we win the card, we wait for it to come. Finally, you have your mail day, it arrives, you go through the process of receiving it and processing it into your collection, whatever that looks like for you. And then what do you do? Like, do you put it up on the wall? I have some cards right there. I've got about 50 cards on my wall there. I got a few over there, a few behind me over there. That's just a sample of my collection. The rest of them are in boxes and they're stored away. And I look at them every so often, but that's it. I don't look at them every day and and just like gaze at them. I look at them every so often. And the then what, to me, the way I want to be able to answer that, Dave, is then what? Well, then I want to make sure that I still love owning it, because as soon as I fall out of love with owning a card, then it moves from the PC into the trader box, and now it can be moved one way or another. So that's my then what. And there was a question that came into the chat here. Contender asks, how do you guys decide what to keep and what to sell for your personal collection? It's a really good question. Now, for me, I kind of make that decision before I buy the card in the first instance. But then there's the second instance where anywhere from, maybe I get the card, it doesn't look like I thought it would, or maybe 5, 10, 15 years go by, and it's like, I don't love this card anymore. So, the question, how do you decide? I think it's more the question better for me, Contender, and for you, Dave, and I want to get your thoughts in a moment, is when do you decide? So for me, before every big card show that I'm set up at, I kind of go through the PC and think, do I still love these cards? And once I don't, I take out, I let them simmer for a few days. I go to them again a few days later. I make sure I'm still out of love with them. And then I will put them in the box that's going to go to the show with me. So it's a then what and a when as well. So that's kind of how I look at it. What about you for your collecting habits?
For me, it's a feeling, right? When I'm looking at them, I don't have a large collection. When I'm looking at a card and I start thinking about how much can I get for it versus how much I enjoy it, I'm trying to train myself to realize, okay, this might be time for this one. And so I'll sort of set it aside. And when I find a card that I want more, and if it's something that's going to take a little bit of saving for, I will immediately go back to those cards that just don't I just don't have those feelings for anymore. It sounds like a relationship, doesn't it?
It does.
It does, right? One card I might show later, and I don't want to give away right now. But I just got it a couple weeks ago. I had sort of lusted after it for a while, and on an older podcast, I mentioned that I had to sell about 24 cards to get it. It ended up being closer to 32, 33 cards, and all the cards that I got rid of were just cards that were just nothing that I cared about anymore. They were cards that I realized I could get back anytime that I wanted, right? They were highly graded 1980s iconic type cards, right? So, Jose Canseco, those types of cards. I get those back anytime I want. But when I look at it and I start thinking about its value and what it can do for me, instead of how much I'm enjoying it, that's it. It's already gone. I might not have admitted it to myself yet, but at that point, the card is already gone.
Yeah, the key there is cards you can get back anytime. I've recently gone through the process of, disposing of several cards from my personal collection that I wasn't originally planning on selling for another 25 years, but things happen in life, and you make decisions on the fly. And it was a very, very challenging process for me to go through these and look at the card and literally what you said. Do I get a feeling from the card? Like, does it go through my body? Is it something that if I don't have this, I'm going to be sad about? Or, and some cards, I'll be sad about selling off my Patrick Waugh 1986 OPG rookie card, but I can get one anytime. There's no shortage of them out there. It's not a rare card. So that's the second. Number one, am I going to have a negative emotional reaction to selling a card or taking a card out of the PC? And number two, if that's the case, how challenging will it be to reacquire it down the road? And if it's yes, I will be emotionally hurt, but it won't be hard to get it back, then it's okay. I can let that one go for the short-term needs I'm having, and I can buy it back later on when things kind of work themselves out. So I think it's really important to look at cards you can potentially get, and this all plays into the then what discussion too, right? Because then what? Well, then maybe this is a card you can end up selling if you need to raise money for something else in real life or for other cards down the road. And we'll maybe talk a bit about the whole.
And have you noticed you never know? It's always peculiar. You never know which ones you're still going to connect with and which ones you won't. So here I am. I'm getting rid of Fred McGriff's. I'm getting rid of Mark McGuire's, Jose Canseco's. But then I come across the Bo Jackson, also a very common card, but I just couldn't do it. Right? There was something about Bo that I just couldn't do. And if I rationally or logically tried to think about it, I wouldn't be able to come up with an answer, which is why I think it's important to really listen to those vibes, those feelings, those emotions.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, I want to talk about the Bob Hosta episode, but first I just want to welcome Non-Sport Showcases. Saturday nights are all right for fighting, and Jaylee must be UFC. Welcome to the show, Non-Sport Showcase. Chris C says some of the best deals I've still found in dollar boxes of card shows. If you have the patience, there's no doubt about that. Drake's PC, good evening. Drake, one of the best guys in the hobby as well. Good to see you, Drake. Irish Flyers. Neil says, I'm like Dave, shallow end base cards matter. No doubt. Chris C, agree. We all had pre-90s. All we had pre-90s were base cards. And that one little point comes, one of your 6 questions, Dave, is, and I'm kind of giving away a bit of the later, but is, if it's a rookie card, why is that so important when a subsequent card may be nicer? And then I'm adding, why are rookie cards so important? And it's partially because back in the 80s and 90s, you really only had one card per year per player, per manufacturer, especially in the 80s. And that plays into me as to why why rookie cards don't matter as much to me as they used to. I think the status of the rookie card is being eroded slightly by the evolution of the hobby overall. But we'll get back to that. Chrissy, thanks for that. Mike Petty says shallow end prevails. Hobby Champs Cousins is still around. I just caught one of their episodes the other day. Lapper, what is going on? Dan says, then what? Display. Display the card. Read the back of the card. Make it part of a set. Enjoy your cards. And great advice there for sure from Dan. He says, if you can't enjoy your cards when they're in your hand, why are you even in the hobby? And I remember one guy I was talking to years ago, Dave. I'd say, what do you do with all these cards? He goes, They just sit in a box in my closet. And I couldn't understand that. Like, do you ever look at them? Because here's a funny thing, Dave, too. Sometimes I will avoid looking at one of my boxes for as long as possible so that when I go to it, it's like, oh, I've been waiting so long. It's like, like the longer you wait to eat, the hungrier you get, sort of
I
thing.
forgot about this card, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah. It's like, I almost just want to make it, I want to make it last longer. I want to make sure I don't get tired of it. I mean, if you look at anything every day, you might get tired of it. So anyway, okay.
If I could say one thing, Dan's Vintage Baseball, I completely agree about the back of the card. I think the back of the card is the most underrated part. Such incredible facts, or when we were growing up, it was just those stats. And I would love it when you would get a veteran player in the 80s, someone who had begun in the 60s, like Nolan Ryan, and you'd almost get a magnifying glass out just to read all those years of stats in the back. And I think I learned math that way, right? I learned data that way. It's a fantastic part of cards.
I love the back of cards, especially as a kid when there were cartoons and little. So here's what he did in the off season to earn money, right? Back when these guys didn't only train in the off season. Dan goes on to say cards as art, history, nostalgia, inherited nostalgia, learning objects, conversation pieces. Yeah, Dan, you're nailing it right there. Definitely agree with that for sure. Mike Petty says, I'm a latchkey. I never fall out of love. That's great. I mean, that means that tells me that you're buying only cards that you're going to be able to love for a long time. Now, Neil, Irish Flyers collector, a very important question of the night. He says, Jeremy and Dave, when do we get to the hair care tips topic, asking for a fellow follically challenged collector? Yes, Dave, you and I could do a podcast on how to manage big hair, big hair. Mike says, Kurt's hair care wax. Fine. Very good. Very good. Contender says, what sport over the next 5 years do you both think will have the biggest boost in popularity? I mean, I don't know. That's not really a question that I have an answer. Hockey is just ripe to grow. It's so much fun and exciting. Dave, anything to throw out there?
Women's basketball, just because of the rise of Caitlin Clark. Otherwise, I think we're just going to see a rising trajectory for all sports. North America, Western Europe, they cannot get enough of their sports.
Well said. Just Legends. Welcome to the show. Larry says, I love the 56 Koufax over the 55 rookie. Says is nicer looking card. And that's subjective to me. I like 55s better than 56s. I think they're a little bit cleaner personally. And I love the Koufax rookie in that set. But I love that Larry is saying that for me, it's the 56 and rookie cards. Okay, let's just talk about rookie cards for a second here. Okay, Dave? Rookie cards it was almost indoctrinated into us as collectors because of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And when Beckett magazine came out and rookie cards became a thing, they were even labeled as such, that those are the cards to get because it's the oldest card of the player. But back then, like I said, you only have one Sandy Koufax card in 1955. You only have one Roberto Clemente. You only have one Nolan Ryan card in 68, and he shares it with Jerry Kuzman. But still, it's his rookie card. So that was the only option. Then in the second year, there's only one card as well. Nowadays, there's 1,200 rookie cards, and then there's very few cards. Many fewer in subsequent years, unless your name is Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout or Sidney Crosby or McDavid, one of these guys, Luka, and so forth. But I think the rookie card, Dave, and I want to get your thought on this really quick. Back when there was only one, or in the 80s in baseball, and they got Fleer and Donruss as well, and some controversy between extended series and that kind of thing. But even with 3 rookie cards, okay, you can have your choice of 3, and whichever one you want, that's great. You don't have many options nowadays. I feel like the rookie card has been watered down, and I know it's still the darling of the hobby, but it's not the darling for me anymore. I much prefer a non-RC designated card for the player that I want a card of, whether it's from his rookie year or a later year. I like RY cards. Rookie year to me is the new RC because it's still a rookie year card. Might not have the RC technical designation, but I don't care. It's still a card that came out of those packs in the rookie year. So I personally, while I've always been a rookie collector, and I still am for cards really up until whatever, the mid 2000s, let's say, I don't care. I think rookie cards have lost for me, it's just, they've lost their allure for me in the last several years. And I might be I'm probably in the minority here, and I'm okay with that. But how do you respond to all that?
I think a lot of people, I think rookie cards have lost the allure for a lot of people, but I think that people don't want that allure to be gone. When you see the intensity and the ferocity of the arguments over things like what is a rookie card, what is the true rookie card, those are indicators that we want the value of a rookie card to be back. I don't know if that can happen because there are just so many options. There's that RC Shield medallion is on just so many things at this point, whether it's a Topps card, a Panini card, a Leaf card, anything else, right? There's still something about having the first of something. We talk about the first Prism in 2012, the first set of Topps in 52. A rookie signifies the first. It's not always the first. I don't want to get into the whole 86 Jordan debate, right? Or, but if we're talking about what's really a rookie card, and if it has to be pack pulled, then Michael Jordan doesn't have a rookie card. He has a first card, but he doesn't have a rookie card. Stan Musial doesn't have a rookie card. He started around 43 or so, and it wasn't until 48 when it came out. But people want those two players to have rookie cards, so therefore we call them. So I think that shows how important the rookie card still is to the hobby. Now, me personally, I like them to a certain point, right? There are so many alternates and variations and parallels now that that fight over what is a rookie card is impossible to win. I'm a baseball card collector, so I suppose Topps base series 1, 2 and update would be the rookie, but I also don't. It's hard. Although I say I just care about the collection, I also care somewhat about the value, right? And for example, this past year, being a Cardinals fan, I was really excited by Jordan Walker, the rookie card. His rookie came out in Series 2. I can go turn over my couch cushions right now and find enough change to buy his rookie card. The base, right? I don't want that. Instead, I want a parallel. But is the parallel actually the rookie card? And then my head just starts to hurt. And I just kind of want to stop thinking about it, right? So I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer other than to say that it's clear how important the rookie card is. But it's also clear that the waters have been muddied so much that I don't know how we reach a conclusion on this kind of a discussion.
Well, we had, I like that. And we had some comments in the chat as to why rookie cards are important. So I'm going to get to them. I want a couple other comments. First, Joe Perot says, I sometimes ask myself, would I pay what I could get for the card? That's a question I asked too. The funny thing is that's a different topic. We'll get back to rookie cards in a second. But with Joe's comment here is, okay, I've got this card here. I could probably sell it for $500. Well, would I go buy it right now if I didn't own it for $500? If the answer is no, well, logically speaking, shouldn't we be selling that for $500? Because you wouldn't go buy it, but we don't. Well, I know I don't a lot of the time because I already have the card and I want it, but it doesn't mean I'd buy it again. It's one of those psychological conundrums we have as hobbyists. We have Oz, the people's mailman from Cousins Collectibles in the audience, who says, you have us in the grave already. These guys are still rocking the pod. As I said, I just listened to one of their episodes within the last 2 or 3 days. Orlando, a collector's dream. Good to see you, buddy. Welcome to the show. Chris C says any Koufax is a good Koufax. Can't argue with that. Now, Chris Olivo here talks about rookie cards. The reason he says the reason the rookie card should be the most important of a player as it gives the hobby stability. If it's a free-for-all on what to collect, you'll have a lot of new collectors that get confused. I sort of see what you're saying, Chris. I think it gives some guidance. It just gives you something to look at and say, like, if you're going to collect a player, where do you go first? What's the first card? And logically, it's the rookie card. But I mean, for a rookie card, for a rookie who has, who came out since 2018 or a bit earlier, and they have 1,000 different rookie cards, then what? It's not like there's that question again, Dave. Then what? Because how do you choose which one to go for? I mean, you're going to take budget into consideration, among other things. What do you like the looks of? But yeah, I hear what you say. I think it does provide somewhat of a framework for collectors. Chris C says too many rookie cards now, and I it's weird. I don't know. Too many means that definitively there's too many of them. Well, the products are selling out. So are there really too many, or is it too many for us? For me, it's too many. For Chris C, it's too many. Is it too many for the industry? until they stop consuming them, it might not be too many for the overall industry, the overall hobby. Lapper says, I love rookie year modern cards, but I'd rather have a player's 6th-year card I really like than a generic commodity type of rookie card. Dave, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and for me, I think once a card for the vintage type players, I think especially when you go back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, I think there is a more special value in the non-first year card, the non-rookie cards as well. Like when I think of, I would love to own a Hank Aaron rookie, but I think I'd rather own it because then I could say that I owned a Hank Aaron rookie. But when I think about what my favorite Hank Aaron card is, it's the 58 with that green background. God, what a card, right? That is the most beautiful card.
Well, yeah.
It's for Hank Aaron, in my opinion, right? And if you don't mind, if I could show a card real quick.
Yeah.
I sold off all my Ohtanis since National ended. I sold one off because I needed to buy a new laptop. I sold some off because I just couldn't say no because the prices were so high before the injury. And then I had one other card that was just way too much card for me that I realized I could, help out the family a little bit and buy a bunch of other cards with it. And so I sold them all. They were gone. And I said on my podcast, maybe I should wait 2 or 3 years and 4 years until he hits this period called the lull, right? Where he's no longer the hot thing, but he's not at the end of his career yet. That's when prices dip. It's where, Bryce Harper is now. It's where Mike Trout is now. Mookie Betts will be there pretty soon. Nolan Arenado. Anyway, I joked that I bet you I'll buy one by March. There's no way I can wait 2 or 3 years, and I already bought one. And so the one that I want to show is the Ohtani rookie that I bought. And the reason that I want to show it is because I think it shows my frame of mind anyway of where I am. So when I think about the first Bowman cards that he had, or the first Topps cards that he has, he's either batting or he's pitching, or they're taking a picture from batting from a different side or a different angle, or he's waiting to swing or he's swinging. And if you cut the borders off, you didn't know if you didn't know if it was a 2018 or a 19 card or a Bowman or a Topps or any of those, you would not know what card was which. Other than the RC on there, you didn't know what the Ohtani rookie was. It was so dull. There are some players who are just naturally charismatic, who have incredible looking cards, right? Like Mookie Betts, like Bryce Harper, like Yadier Molina. For whatever reason, their cards all look incredible. And then you have Ohtani and Pujols, who their cards put you to sleep. And so what I went for is I went and did something that 6 months ago I said I would never do, which is I went and I got an unlicensed card. And because I love the way it looked. And the card that I picked up is a 2018 Leaf Achievement Gold out of 100 Ohtani card. And yeah, he doesn't have the A on his hat because it's not licensed. I'll show it here in just a moment. But it just looked like a rookie card should look. It looked special. And I got it for about 1/15th, 1/20th the price of a normal Ohtani rookie card that would be numbered to 100 and a PSA 10. And so if you can see it, that's it, right? Like, what a fantastic looking card. I think anyway. Will it sell for anything? No, it's unlicensed, right? It's not even Panini. It's not even this Panini Prism Gold out of 10, which sells for 4 figures. It's a Leaf card. But I got that because I wanted his rookie, because rookies are special. But I also didn't want it to be generic. And I wanted to be something that when I think of a rookie card, I can picture that card. And so I'm very happy to have that in my collection.
Yeah. That's the most important thing there. I'm so happy to have that in my collection. That comment there. You brought up the lull. People often, I get with Connor Bedard being, this phenom in hockey. I get so many people that are messaging me all the time saying, what Bedard card? People who know I'm into the hobby, but they're not in the hobby themselves. Like I'm hearing from people I haven't heard from since Connor McDavid came into the NHL asking me what to buy. And I say, just wait, because they want to know as soon as it comes out, they want to buy it. And it doesn't work that way anymore. You're going to pay more right out of the gate, I feel, than you will a year or two later. Every player goes through a lull, whether they fall into a slump, they have a sophomore slump, or they get injured, which is now Connor Bedard's status. Although he doesn't have many cards out yet, so it's not going to hurt the value of his cards yet. But the lull is something that if you have lived through cycles of this hobby, that the lull for every player is coming, and you just have to wait for it so that you can, be as economically responsible as possible. So that's the law. I also listened to one of your episodes where you talk about, and I have to bring this up because it's where I don't agree with you, Dave. You say that the 69 Reggie Jackson rookie card, while a pleasant portrait card, isn't his nicest card. I think you mentioned, you shout out the 78 Topps Reggie, which I went and looked at today. It's a fantastic card. I see why you love it with that amazing batting pose. And he's got 2 cards in that set. I found out they're both actually really nice. But the 69 Reggie Jackson, Dave, it's one of my favorite personally. So you struck a chord. You hit on a card that I truly love is the 69 Reggie rookie. Something about that portrait, the green and the yellow with his name in the blue, in the purple circle in the top. I love that purple circle. I just love that. And Dave, I sold one of them. I sold my original copy. And you make this comment too that I want to touch on. You say that, you can get a PSA 8 Reggie Jackson for $3,000 to $5,000, or you can get a PSA 8 78 Reggie Jackson for $700 or $800.
Oh, no, it's like $75.
Well, okay, so whatever it was, sorry.
Yeah.
But then I just wanted to touch on that a bit and say too, that there are you don't, to me, the comparison that I would make if I was choosing between those 2 Reggie Jackson cards is, I can get a really nice PSA 3 or 4 Reggie Jackson for how much versus a really nice, 78 Reggie Jackson. Like, I wouldn't be comparing 8s personally. I would be comparing the card I want, because the technical grade on vintage cards is getting less and less important to me as time goes by, where I just want a card that I love the looks of. I sold my PSA 8 Reggie Jackson before the pandemic. Then it went up in value. I'm like, oh, what did I do? Hey, you win some, you lose some. But then I reacquired a Reggie Jackson rookie I think it was the very end of the Atlantic City National in 2022. It's a 6. And Dave, I can tell you with 100% honesty, my 6 is way nicer than my 8 was. And that's my point there. But back to the Reggie. I just love the 69 Reggie rookie. But the card you point out is wonderful too. And you make a very good argument there as well.
And I do like the 69. And at some point I would like to have that in my collection, because I have his 87 Fleer Glossy card, which that's when he went back to Oakland for his final year, right? When he was old and couldn't play much. And I just want to have that bookend. But to me, there's nothing like the 70. I totally hear what you're saying about the 69, but that 78, it's the end of that corkscrew swing of his, really reminiscent to Musial's cork swing, but more violent at the same time. And so I think that's how I remember him. Right. I remember that swing in which he was trying to hit the ball out every single time. But yeah, the 69 with that sleeve, I think it has the sleeveless A's jersey as well, that retro. And it's Oakland jerseys look terrific on cards.
Well, I think the Ricky Henderson rookie is another beauty. Like I love, and that's more of that's not a portrait like versus the Reggie rookie. It's more like the Reggie 78 Topps where it's an action shot. You got the full body. I love those cards.
I love that. The 80 Henderson is one of my 5 all-time favorite cards.
That's a great card. It's a great card. Okay, Hobby Champs made the comment that rookie cards and rookie year cards are special because once that year is over, they cannot be reproduced. It's over, done. Those are your options. The supply is finite, which can drive demand. Yeah, I think what he's saying is if there's going to be 1,800 cards of a player in his rookie year, those are the only 1,800 cards you're ever going to be able to choose from his rookie year. And I say 1,800 to kind of prove the point, or to emphasize the point that I hear the comment, but I don't buy it as much as I used to that Hobby Champs is making, because the supply is finite, but there's tens and tens of thousands of them for many players, that have been released in the last 5 to 8 years. Which is why I don't even collect that many cards from the last 5 to 8 years, especially rookies, because there's just, if I fell in love with a player, or, that's weird to say, fell in love with a player. If I really liked a player and I had to have their rookie card, I still don't know that I would buy it. I would probably look for a rarer, more interesting card than a card that I can go find 100 of them between eBay and PWCC and ComC any night of the week. I'd rather find something a little bit more challenging, but I do understand that once they are made, that is it. And any card that comes out after is not a rookie year card. However, with the way Panini and Topps and Upper Deck do things these days, Dave, is that will there ever be as many cards in the aggregate subsequent years as there are in the rookie year? Like, I don't know. Maybe there are, maybe for some players, probably, but for most, I don't think so. I think most players, some players only get rookie year cards because they were rookie and then they don't do much after that. So tough. David Owen says, give me a PMG championship Mark McGuire over his 85 USA rookie card all day. Dave, you had a visceral response to that. What are you thinking?
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, the PMG champ McGuire is just insane, right? And some of his essential credential cards are gorgeous. And that 85 USA card is the only card I ever had come back as fake. I sent it off to SGC, and they said they wouldn't grade it. The card was a fake, and so I have a bit of a sour taste in my mouth with that card. But with David Owens bringing up the PMG Championship McGuire, that is a fantastic card. I was sideswiped by that one, David Owens, and I was not expecting it, which is why I swooned a bit.
Yeah, good. Hobby Champ says, that's why I focus on more scarce alternative rookie cards like stickers, box set, box bottoms. Yeah, I hear you on that, Hobby Champs. I like the more obscure, the rarer, I think the card companies in the design department, I think they put more thought into inserts than they do into base cards. And I think they put more thought into parallels than, because you have a base card. Well, what are we going to do for a parallel? Once you get out, once they leave the zoo, they have to be really creative to come up with what they're going to do. And I think they put more thought in that. So I'm with Hobby Champs on that. Larry said the 51 Bowman Mantle and the Maze versus the 52 Tops Maze. Well, there is no debate there in my mind, Larry. There's no debate. Mantle and Maze have one rookie card, and that's the 51 Bowman. The 52 Tops cards are more iconic, and they're more popular and they're more valuable, but that doesn't mean that they're rookie cards. They're just more iconic and more valuable because that's the way the hobby is. But the rookies are those 51 Bowmans, and to me, there is no debate about it. I don't think anyone would really debate that. And it kind of bothers me, Dave, when I hear industry experts and people in high places refer to a 52 Tops Mantle as a rookie, because it just isn't. I find it to be a little bit misleading, but I don't think they're doing it deliberately to mislead. I think they're just so conditioned to saying it that way. But, leaders of the industry, the hobby, I think should know better and should properly describe these things.
Well, they're either being disingenuous, naive, or just showing their lack of education within the hobby. The 51, that's amazing Mantle. 52 is their most valuable.
Irish Flyer says hockey makes the preferred rookie card easy. Young Guns, no other sport really does that, and that is the preferred for the masses. But for a hockey collector, not for me. I mean, I have no Young Guns under ownership at all at this time. Not a single Young Guns in my under ownership at all. Dan here says the 1964 Pete Rose is way better than the floating head 63. See, I like the 63 because it's so weird looking. I recently sold my 64 and I kept my 63. I love the 64. Don't get me wrong, Dan. I love the 64. I also love the 71 Munson and the 69 Nolan Ryan and the 76 Gary Carter and so on and so forth. I'm with you on all those. OC Trust Attorney says, for me, the best baseball rookie card is Topps Base and Topps Chrome. And yeah, I think that makes sense for a lot of people. Mike Petty says every player in every sport gets hurt nowadays. Pete Rose missed 10 games in 23 years. He's right? Like, talking about the lull. There's always going to be a lull coming. Mike Petty knows about my Reggie Jackson rookie card. He said, yeah, it is a beauty. Mike, David Owens loves the 1978 Topps baseball set. All right, Dave, let's get back to you. When I was talking the other day, and I was asking you, what are some of your favorite episodes that you have done? You mentioned the episode that you did with Rob Gerard, the former sports card therapist, and because you were talking about the value of cards beyond money, and it led into your acquisition of your 1959 Topps Bob Gibson. Can you share with the audience a little bit more about what that episode and really what made it special for you?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my mom taught me about sports, not my dad. And being from St. Louis, the Cardinals were the team. baseball was a religion there practically. And Bob Gibson was her favorite player. And she would tell stories, or I'd read about stories because I read so much about baseball growing up, about his competitive streak. And we all know about that 1968 season, the 1.12 ERA, all those shutouts. But my favorite story always about him was he had a teammate who he roomed on the road with, and they were very close. Their families dined together. And I think it was Bill White, And he gets moved to the Phillies. And they're in the elevator going, they happen to be in the elevator at the same time. The first time the Phillies played the Cardinals, when his old friend is now an opposing player. And Gibson says nothing to him, right? And his friend is saying, "Hey, Bob, how you doing? Gibson says nothing to him. And Gibson's pitching that day. He gets on the mound, and the first at bat just hits him, right? Pitch, like right in the back, right in the ribs, right in the legs, somewhere. And then after the game, Bob was talking to him. At this time, Bob's better. He's like, "Bob, what the hell, man? Like, why'd you do that?" He goes, "Because we're not teammates anymore." So I love Bob Gibson. She died years ago. My mom died in 2005. So, it's 18 years ago now almost. But since I got back in the hobby, I wanted to get a Bob Gibson as a way of honoring her, right? Also me, because I like the card. I like the pink of the 59 Topps rookie, but it was also for her. And so finally, after 2 or 3 years of it being in my box, out of my watch list, in my inbox, gone, in, out, I finally went and I got one. And it was one that was in my price range, and it was one that was what I like to see out of a vintage card in terms of design and upkeep and centering and everything else. And I had heard Rob in the past talk about his dad's relationship to Mickey Mantle, and that's why he had some Mantle stuff as well. And so even though Rob helped get me started with the podcasting, I purposely never asked him on because I just didn't want to. He was busy enough, right? And I thought, but this is finally the episode to do it. And I said, why don't you come on and let's talk about cards beyond the value of their money and cards beyond the value of flipping, and instead talk about cards on a much more emotional, deeper level, and how they can connect you to different generations. And so for however long we talked, 45 minutes to an hour, however long it was, I talked about my mom and Gibson. He talked about Mantle and his dad. And then we also just talked about what cards can really mean. And it's just an episode that I'm really grateful to have been able to do. One thing about that Gibson that was weird is once I got it, it was more of a relief than it was joy, because I didn't have to be thinking about it anymore. And it's not one I'm ever going to move or flip, right? Nothing like that, unless I absolutely am in some sort of a family financial crisis, anything like that. But it was almost just so intense that I was just happy to not have to have that in my watch list anymore. But that was part of it, right? It was it's a baseball card, but yet it had become so emotionally taxing that getting it was just a form of therapy, a form of relief. And so that's what Rob and I talked about for an episode.
Yeah, you're talking about, the Bob Gibson for your mom, the Mantle for him and his dad. And this is like elevated nostalgia in a way, because it's not just your own nostalgia for that player, that team, that time of your life when you were a fan of that player or team, but there's real emotional value, emotional meaning between you and that card, because it not only connects you to that player or that team, it connects you to your family member who's even no longer with you. Even more elevation towards the importance of that nostalgia. And that, we always say, us collectors who have been around, who have been collecting since we were kids, doesn't matter how old you are now, but if you're collecting when you were 8 to 15 years old, somewhere in there, we always kind of say that it reminds me of those days when I didn't have to pay the mortgage, feed the kids, go to work every day. I didn't have any responsibility. It takes us to an earlier time. It's why we like comic books and video games and all these things we used to do as kids. But there's even more to it when you can make the connection that you just talked about. And I don't know how many people have stories like that. For me, there is a bit of that, but it's more to do with friends than really family. I never collect with family. So I'm sure, but I just want people in the audience to kind of think about that right now. Think about why. I always try and analyze myself. Why do I need cards? And want versus need is a whole other question that I know you ask as one of your 6 questions. But the want versus the need is a really fun question. And why do we feel like we want and need these cards as collectors? Not to buy, to flip, or to sell, or I mean, as collectors, what is it that we're trying to what are we grasping at here when we are wanting these cards and spending, whether you're in the shallow end and you're spending, a little bit of money on it, or you're in the ultra deep end and you're spending more than you can afford on cards? Why is it that we're doing that? That's a whole sort of other topic. Anything else before we move on to the next one I want to touch on?
No, I would just say that at the end of last year, I like so many other people, right? I did my top 10 pickups of last year. And my number one, well, that Gibson was like number 4 or 5. I just didn't even want to put it higher than that because I still feel like, good, I got it, it's done. But my number one was the 53 Satchel Paige, which I finally got toward the end of last year when I had to move some Otanis to do it. But I was glad that of all the people that I decided to buy cards of at, a couple of years ago, I'm glad it was Otani because that enabled me to get the Paige. Anyway, I'm rambling. With the Otani, that also was a connection because growing up with my grandfather, at the time, St. Louis used to have 2 baseball teams. They had the Cardinals, but they also had the Browns. And he would tell stories when he was a kid in the 30s that he would, sneak in to see Browns games because the Browns even then weren't popular. The Cardinals were always the team. It's why the Browns moved to Baltimore, one reason. But I always had that in my head that he would sneak in and he would see Browns games and he would talk about seeing Babe Ruth because the Browns were an AL team. And so the Yankees would come to town and he'd see Babe Ruth. And I wanted to have a player with a Browns card, with a Browns hat on. I didn't really want to go back as far as, like George Sizzler or anyone like that. Right. But I guess it was kind of cheating because by the time that Satchel was on the Browns, my grandfather was already, a World War II vet with 3 kids. But I still wanted to get something with the Browns. So even past the Gibson, I was still thinking about that connection. And not all my cards are like that, right? But those are the 2 that do have that connection. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Okay, a couple comments and we'll go to the next one. Josh Giddy says, Jeremy, can you see Connor Bedard being better than Connor McDavid? No, I cannot. Now, will he be almost as good and have a couple Stanley Cups to McDavid's none? And then it doesn't matter if he's as good as him. I'd like to see him have some of that team success as well, but I'd like to see Connor McDavid have that. But skill-wise, I just can't. I think McDavid is far and away the best player we've seen technically as a technical player. I'm not talking about his leadership skills. I'm just talking about his 200-foot skills. I'm just talking about stick handling and vision and hockey IQ. I don't know if anyone's been better than him since Mario Lemieux, really. Hobby Champ says, I miss Rob's take, so he didn't pay for a card. Not the end of the world. We've done episodes on that. That's a whole other topic. Dan says, Rob was a very valuable member of the hobby, and I wish he would come back. We're talking about Rob Gerard here. These comments are about Rob Gerard, the former sports card therapist. Joe says, Dave is making me want to pull out my 59 Gibson sweet card, and cool to have that extra layer of connection. Definitely. Isn't that nice when you hear a comment like that? Dave, you've inspired someone to want to pull out one of their cards and have a look at it. Like, that's just fun. Dan says, I just did an entire show on my channel to celebrate my uncle's 100th birthday by profiling his favorite team, the 1948 Braves, a team that I PC for family reasons. Like, yeah, that's such a cool way to approach a hobby, is having that, just those extra reasons versus because they're popular, there are some really nice reasons to collect certain cards out there. Okay, Dave, how do you like your vintage? That's one of my questions that I like to ask people. You can say to somebody, how do you take your coffee? I want to know from you, Dave, how do you take your vintage? And I'll let you answer. I think people understand what the question's getting at.
Yeah, it has to start with centering. My eyes go to centering first, and I forget who said it. Somebody said, you wouldn't hang the Mona Lisa, right, if half the picture was off the frame.
That might be Maddie C.
It was Maddie C collection, right? It was Maddie C. And I'm the same way. So I don't mind if my corners are bent or rounded. In fact, it makes me think that a card shows its age, which I think is kind of nice, right? But it's got to be centered. Even when I'm scrolling through eBay on my phone and the pictures are small, before I've even zoomed in, I just have an eye I can look right away and goes, no. I'd like it to be centered right to left, and I don't like it to be sitting high or low. I can take 55, 45. That's fine. And for certain cards, even maybe 60, 40. but not much more than that. It's like if I cannot unsee it. I don't mind a little crease, but it cannot be in the face.
Oh, so I have to jump in before I want to do this. I want to make sure I do this before you do. I want to call out Bob Hosta from your recent episode that I listened to today. And that's what is driving this question I'm asking you. How do you take your vintage? Is your episode with Bob Hosta. I'd like everyone to go, if you have time, go listen to that on the Shallow End podcast. Because what Bob said was that he doesn't mind some creasing, but his number one rule is no creases through the player's face. And I think that's a pretty important guideline to have, I think. So I just want to shout him out because that's what drove this question. And now I'm going to hand it back to you.
Yeah. And so it's, his IG is Bob Hosta Collection. So, and he's worth a follow. Really such a thoughtful guy. I love talking with him. So centering us first. Don't mind busted up corners. That's fine. I don't mind edges that are a little rough and cracking. That doesn't bother me at all. I'd like the color to be as vibrant as possible. If there's a little bit of fading, that's okay. But I do not like the registration to be off. That don't like that. So say if I were ever to get a 48 leaf Stan Musial, right? Sometimes you can just see the outline, which is just, you can see how far off it is sometimes. So that would bug me a little bit. Like Bob, I don't mind a crease as long as it's not on the face. But number one for me is centering. And then number two is the color's got to be close to as vibrant as it can be. But yeah, cut my corners off. I don't care.
Yeah, no, the way I answer that question is like you gave us the specifics and I can do that too. But the way I answer that question is I want my vintage to look its age. If those corners of my 1933 Gaudis are like super like sharp that they would, they could cut you. Like, I don't know, it doesn't feel natural to me to have a card from 1933 with squared off corners. I want my cards to look their age. Now, I don't necessarily want them to have been crumpled up and flattened out again, but like you, centering is important. It's not the end all be all. What's more important to me though is registration. As you were talking, the focus of the card. I want my car. I don't, you remember when you used to take pictures with an actual camera and get the film developed. Most of us remember that. If there were sometimes pictures that came out blurry, you probably didn't keep those. You probably threw those in the garbage because they were no good to you. I don't want a card that has terrible registration. A little bit of a registration issue is okay to the extent that it does not impact the overall aesthetic of the card, the overall eye appeal. And 48 Leaf is pretty famous for having some pretty blurry off-registered cards. So yeah, I like them to look their age, be as well centered as possible, strong registration as possible, and also to not be, like you said, I don't want a scuffed surface either. I have one card in my collection that's like that, but it has everything else going for it that I still love it. It's my 33 Sport Kings Eddie Shore, actually talking about an old card. So yeah, I don't want my borders of my 53 Parkhurst or my 52 Tops, let's say, to be white as rice. I want them to show that they've actually breathed a little bit over the past 70 years or so. So yeah, a little bit of granularity there, but at the end of the day, I like my vintage to look its age. And which ties into grading and all that. Like, I'm all for grading for various reasons, but I am not prisoner to the grade. If I see a 4 that I like more than a 6 or a 2 that I like more than a 4, taking budget into consideration, I'll buy that 2 all day long and say, forget the 4. I'll probably save some money too. So yeah.
I agree with all that you said. And I would also add too, I don't like snow on there either. When
hard to get away from it on some cards though.
It is. But for some of those, I will tend to just maybe not even want the card at that point. Right. But yeah, like you're talking about grading, when it comes to vintage, when it comes to grading, I kind of like it just to be slabbed, right? Just because somebody who was more professional and more trained than I has said that the card is authentic, right? And for me, it's not so much, and for so many other people as well, I'm not being original with this, but I think I just like my vintage slab because I have more of a sense of security that the card is what it's supposed to be as well. And also for the preservation.
Yeah, well, of course, right? To authenticity, preservation is nice too. There's other ways to preserve, but authenticity definitely, and event. And the other thing for me, as a father, is that like should something happen, it's just going to be easier for my wife, my kids, whomever, to ultimately dispose of these things if they're graded. I think it's almost like succession planning, estate planning, grading. I don't want to knock on wood and all that sort of thing, but you just never know. And so I think it's important for those reasons as well. And of course, if you are in the buy sell game, it's much easier to sell something that is graded because at least there is a third party. I can't say objective without mean it. So I'm not going to say an objective opinion. I think they want to be objective a lot of the time, but it's just really difficult to be. But anyway, I think there's lots of good about it. Let's go back to the cards for saying T. Jones says, I despise that centering has gained more prominence in overall condition. The corners add rare. I'm not sure what you're saying, T. but I get not everybody needs centering. Not funny. Welcome to the show. Not funny says, I'll take any example at the right price. Then I can always look to upgrade. Yeah, I won't take any example at the right price. Not personally, I won't, but hey, that's a strategy, and I'm sure it's working for you. Mike Petty says each card has different qualities that add to the beauty. Not every card has to be centered. That's why I'm the king, or I'm the low eye appeal king. And I love that approach too. Yeah, we don't all have to be prisoner to some of these things. Bob Hosta says a crisp card with a pinhole is fantastic. An instant PSA 1 really is what it is. And I completely agree with that comment. 100%. Mookie says, breaking, Iowa man hates snow.
Yes.
Hobby Champs orders are centering, registration, corners, edges, in that order. That's my order too. That is my order exactly. How I look at how I assess condition for my own liking. That's exactly how I do it. T-Dot says eye appeal is huge on a card like the Gretzky rookie. Yeah, if the card isn't in focus, I move on. Same here. Hobby Champs says back centering also means a lot to me, means less to me, means less to the technical grading companies as well, but means a lot less to me actually. So it doesn't mean a lot to me like it does Hobby Champs. It means a lot less because I do spend most of my time looking at the front, but like Dave said earlier, there's something to be said for appreciating the backs of cards. Where do you fall on centering on the back, Dave?
It doesn't bother me as much, right? I don't like a miscut on the back. I like to be able to read all the content. I like the 71. I like the 71 Kareem a lot. I don't collect basketball. If I did, I would start with that card. But that card often will cut off. It'll hang so low on the back that you can't see the bottom of it. But no, less so. I need the front. I need the display side to be centered. Otherwise, I don't. It makes me itch.
Well, here's a breaking opinion right here. Chris C says I don't have to have a vintage card that's graded either. Well, that's true, right? I totally hear that. You definitely do not have to have a card. They don't have to all be graded, and it depends where you get it from. If you're buying a card from somebody who found them in the attic after 60 years. It's probably good if they legit found it in the attic after 60 years, or you're buying it from a guy who's had a card shop for 45 years and you know him and trust him, then you don't need to worry about authenticity. You can buy it that way and still enjoy it. The Cardboard Corner says that has been my outlook as well, Jeremy. So many people say that they grade PC with SGC or PSA for resale. Aren't all of our collections going to be resold eventually? Unless you are literally buried with them, yes, they're going to be sold eventually. Cardboard Corner, I agree with that, and I think a lot. Yeah, I mean, you're doing your heirs a disservice by thinking that if your cards go to zero, you don't care if you're not taking care of them, that kind of thing. But in any event, yeah, eventually everything's going to hit the market again, right, Dave? I mean, even cards that are locked away forever, there is no such thing as forever in this hobby because we, as collectors, are not forever. So.
No, and you just have to ask yourself, is it going to be resold by you or is it going to be resold after you?
Exactly. Oh, there's some other things that come out of that. Okay, but we'll save those for another. Okay, I wanted to now talk about your episode with the 6 questions, and we've already touched on a couple of them, but let's just kind of run through. So guys, Dave did an episode. You got to go back and listen to it to get it, his original episode. I've listened to it 3 times. In all honesty, I find it to be that enlightening. And Dave, the summary of this episode is that when you are looking to purchase a card, you have a filter, and that filter consists of 6 questions that you ask yourself before you make that purchase. So, do you want to go through these questions one at a time? Would you like me to kind of tee them up for you one at a time? How do you want to do this? I think it's important we get through these.
Yeah, I'll just go through it, and I just want to say first that it's not perfect, right? And I came up with these questions because through trial and error and through making some bad purchases and a lack of focus. And so even now, since I've come up with these 6 questions, I sometimes forget to even go through them. I let impulse take over and I go. But here's the first one. The first one that I ask is do I want to look at the card or do I just want to own it? And I think it was Dan earlier who made the point about the aesthetics and the artistry of a card, and that really matters. And I mentioned before the 87 Donruss Bo Jackson rated rookie, and the reason that I couldn't part with that when I was getting rid of a bunch of things a few weeks ago to buy this other card is that card to me is Bo, right? I mean, he is just jacked in that baseball uniform, and that's how I remember him being, right? That card, it's dark. Looks like he's playing catch, almost like he's in the Field of Dreams. It is a beautiful card. On the other hand, the 87 Topps Smart McGwire, it's just another shot of a baseball player standing there in his stance. That's all it is. Did I want to have that card? Yeah, because it made me. It was nostalgic, right? But I didn't want to look at it, and that's what I mean by do you want to have it? You have it, then what? Okay, so you've got it, but you actually want to take out this card and look at it and appreciate what it looks like.
And I think that's such a great filter to run your potential purchases through. Are you going to, there are cards, Dave, that I will literally make a little stack, from where I keep them. Some of them are right here in this room. I'll make a stack and I will carry them up to my bedroom with me and I'll put them on my night table. And as I'm falling asleep, I will look at the cards front and the back and I will just kind of, enjoy them. I don't do that with all my cards, but cards like that, it also ties into the want versus need. Like, do you get a feeling from a card when you look at it? And there's a couple cards that I've purchased, Dave, where I see it hit the online marketplace, and for 7 or 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever, I am going and looking at that every single day to see where the bid is at and just to look at it. And as I'm looking at it, some cards, I'm like, I am winning this no matter what. I am going to war over this card, and this is a war I'm going to win. I've gone to war and lost cards. It happened to me last week. You can't win every war you get into to win a card. But some cards you want to look at and you're going to enjoy over and over again, and some you just end up putting them away. And then when you go through your process of deciding if you're going to keep them, however often you do that, maybe you can convert that back into some other resources right into another
Yep.
card. Okay. So do you want to own the card, or do you want to own the card and look at it, or do you just want to own the card? If you want to own it and look at it, it passes. And then my question is, then do you go to the next question, or?
No, they're not in any order. It's just the order that happened to come out of my mouth, right? So the second question was, do I want this card or do I need this card? And you said it better than I could just now. Sometimes you look at something and that's it. I'm going to get this card. Everybody else bidding, bad news. You're going to lose this time, right? I'm going to get it. And if you find yourself drifting off at night thinking about it, you're driving to work and you're thinking about it, that's a pretty good sign that this is a card that you need, right? Sometimes you go through something and think, oh, I like that. But then you don't think about it anymore. And then it's on your watch list for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months. And you keep forgetting that it's there. I get rid of it. I like it. The idea of it might be nice, but when I find myself unable to get it out of my brain, that's when I know that there's something there. There's there if that's going to happen.
Yeah. And so in your episode, you took it a step further. You actually were kind of talking about, like, when you're thinking about the card, are you having like this almost like a visceral lust for the card? Or is it something that you are just looking to acquire to fulfill like a temporary need, like maybe some retail therapy, or you haven't picked up anything for a while? So, what am I going to buy? And, this card looks good. I'm going to buy it. It's like, how do you, Dave, recognize that you might not be truly lusting for the card where you actually like need it versus want it.
It's temporary moments of clarity, right? And within the fog of collecting, I have these temporary moments of collecting where I know what I'm like, where I know that I get ideas, and these ideas are just half baked. Today, for example, I was thinking, should I start collecting Ichiro? And then I was just like, no, you shouldn't. You should not start collecting Ichiro. I love Ichiro. I mean, just as this, God, I love Ichiro so much, but I already have enough going on. But on eBay right now is his 2004 Topps Chrome Red X Fractor. Not numbered, but there were less than 70 of those made. And the Albert Pujols of that card is the number one card on my want list for this year. Last time there was one on eBay, I think was end of 22. I didn't know how rare they were at the time. I should have jumped then, but I saw an Ichiro one, and I think I sort of correlated the two, right? Where I thought, oh, well, I want the Pujols one. That's hard to find. And this is the first Ichiro one that's come up for a while. I want that. But I also want his 02 Topps Chrome Gold. And then I had to step away and say, no. And so I don't know how that happened, but for whatever reason, I just had a temporary moment of clarity. I wish there was something more scientific or logical to it, but I just got lucky on that one.
Yeah. Okay, let's a couple of comments that have come in, and then we're going to get to skip the question 4. Or no, we're going to get to question 3 here in a moment. We're going to skip 4, then we'll go to 5 because we already covered question 4. Dan's Vintage says the in quotes no matter what cards. I know them well, and I think we all have. Well, most people I know. I certainly have a couple no matter what cards out there. Mookie says, I ask a similar question, Dave. If I wouldn't put a potential purchase on a shelf in my museum, maybe I will hold off. See, that's a great question for Mookie, who has a museum. You need, I think one of the takeaways for people, and for me included in this episode, is Dave has got his 6 questions that he's stumbled into, kind of by trial and error. And he's put a lot of thought into it. And you'll know that by listening to his episode. But they don't have to be our questions. We can come up with another, questions for yourself that work for you. El Toro Loco said earlier that it makes it easier on your family. Yes, if you are having your cards somewhat, especially vintage, important cards graded for your ultimate demise. Of course, won't talk much more about that. T-Dot wants to know, what card did I go to war for last week and not win? It was a 2021 Upper Deck the Cup, Timu Solani, emblems of endorsement. And I took a knife to a gunfight for that one, Dave. I wasn't even close. I think I was 4th highest, but a great a war that I lost. Okay, next question had to do, we kind of addressed this one. It had to do with the rookie cards, but I'm going to let you speak to it if there's anything more to say than what we said earlier.
Yeah, it was more with the cards. It was more asking myself, do I want this card because of this player, because it is the rookie card, or because I actually like the card, right? If the later year cards are more attractive and more affordable, why would I buy the rookie card? Sometimes you buy the rookie just because it's the rookie, and not you, me. That's what I would ask myself. I would realize I was doing that, and I would get the rookie card and realize I was just getting it because I thought that I should have it, and so that was the foundation of that question. Got it. Yeah, and it's like. I used to say that everybody who collects hockey cards should have a Wayne Gretzky rookie card. And you can go back to my content from 3 years ago and probably hear me say that a few times a year. And I don't know that I believe that anymore. And I think I'm entitled to change my thoughts on these sorts of things as well, because I'm evolving, and developing new ideas and soaking in new ideas from other people whose ideas I respect and listen to. And I don't know that that's the case anymore for me. That I think that, and of course, not everybody needs to have any single card, but more of a generalization. If you're a basketball collector, do you need to have a Michael Jordan 86 Fleer? Debatable if it's a rookie card or not, but do you need to have an 86 Michael Jordan Fleer card? Maybe not. I don't know. So I like that that's a question that you ask. I think it's an important question that you ask. 89 Upper Deck Griffey. If you collect baseball, do you have to have the 89 Upper Deck Griffey? I mean, there are about 2.5 million out there. So
I recently sold mine, Dave. I sold mine because I have Griffey cards, a couple that I like a lot more. And I thought, I don't need that card. It's cool, But if I want one, it goes back to what we were talking about way earlier in the show. If I want one, I have my choice of thousands of them. Any night of the year, I can go find one if I want one, or I can go buy a raw copy for 10 or 15 bucks at the next card show and have that card if I really want one. So, okay, that was the rookie question. So that was question 3. Question 4 is then what, which we've covered. Question 5. Why don't you tell us what question 5 is?
Question 5 is me literally asking myself, you realize you're not going to make any money on this card, right? So basically what I'm hoping for is just not to, if I ever have to move a card, thinking that if nothing else, maybe I'll just break even, right? Meaning I don't want to buy something that is sort of the flavor of the day. Not a Kaboom guy, right? Will Kabooms hold long-term value? Will the mangas hold long-term value? Like maybe, I don't know, but they could just be trendy now. And if I'm really into one, then 15 years from now, maybe once I see that I won't be just flushing money. That's kind of what I think about. But that being said, is I should not be buying any card thinking that I'm buying this card to flip it. This card is not going to make me rich. It's not going to be the 89 Topps Future Stars Greg Jeffries, right? Which is what everybody was going for before they realized they should have been going for Griffey. 85 Topps Eric Davis, right? The 84 Don Russ, Don Mattingly. Those are the dreams that I filled my head with when I was younger. And you would think that being older, a family and kids and a job, that would no longer be how I think. But at first, when I got back into the hobby, I was thinking, oh, this card's going to be worth a lot. And they weren't. They absolutely were not. This is just my very long-winded way of saying what everybody else says, which is just buy what you like, buy what you think makes sense for you, and stop trying to think that this is your 401k.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think it's one thing to, you can purchase sports cards with the intention of selling them for more than you bought them for, or like keeping up with inflation, let's say. You said very well in one of your episodes that if I buy it for $40 today and I can sell it 20 years from now for $40, and my initial thought was, yeah, but the time value of money and inflation, you've lost money. But then that thought went through my head really quickly. And then you said, but I've had 25 years of enjoyment from the card. Well, that makes up for the loss of time value of money and inflation, because you received a benefit from owning that card, which was an emotional benefit, which was worth the money. I mean, you go into a movie at 8:00 for $20. You come out of that movie 2 hours later, you have $0. Does that mean you shouldn't have gone to the movie? No, you had 2 hours of entertainment.
Yeah, function and utility matter, right?
Right.
If I buy a brand new couch for $800 and 15 years from now I sell it for $200, I am not losing money. I got 15 years of utility out of the couch and got some money back out of it too. Now, obviously, I do not want to lose 75% on a card. That's a little bit different. But as long as I'm breaking even, fine, good enough.
Or even losing a bit is okay too,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
I mean,
yeah,
it depends what you're in it for. If you are not really a collector, if you don't have anyway.
And I'm not saying sports cards or couches.
Right. T-Dot made this comment. He says, you should have a collection of top tier rookies in a sport that you collect. So I just want to kind of play devil's advocate on this question for a moment, because just like I said, everyone should have a Wayne Gretzky rookie if you collect hockey. Well, I don't really think anyone, T-Dot or myself, should say to anybody, you should have this in your collection, because I don't walk in your shoes. I don't know what you should have. You know what you should have. You know what you want. I don't want to tell anybody what they should have. Then I think about this question, Dave. I think to myself, well, okay, so if I collect hockey and now so does that mean that I have to have a Gordie Howe rookie and a Bobby Orr and a Wayne Gretzky and a Mario Lemieux? Well, those are very hard to afford for most people. So now I feel inadequate because I can't afford it maybe, but someone's telling me I should have it. So I don't know. I think that's too strong of a statement. But then I think about, okay, well, maybe I don't collect vintage, so I don't want those guys. I didn't see them play. Why should I have them? maybe I should have top tier rookies in this sport today. Well, we know how expensive some top tier rookie. You want even a young gun Sidney Crosby, you're spending a couple $1,000s. So I hear what T-Dot's saying, and I live by it myself. I want to have that myself, but I don't want to tell anybody else you should do this anymore.
When I see a comment like that, and I respect the question, T-Dot, you should have a collection of top tier rookies in the sport you collect. My response is, why? Why should I?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm, and this is sort of newer for me, Dave. And maybe I'm listening to you and others. I don't know, but or maybe even going through the process of moving off of some cards that I've had for years and being okay with it. I moved some cards that I've had for years, like key rookie cards, 60s, 70s, 80s rookies, and I don't miss them, which is really nice to be able to say. And not only do I not miss them, if I want them, if I do end up missing, like I sold my Reggie and I missed it and I reacquired it, and I missed it right away. It was like, damn, I love that card. But a Marc Messier rookie, I can go find another Marc Messier rookie whenever. I'm not in a rush. I got some cool Messier cards in the collection. Bob Hosta says you can never underestimate the utility value of ownership. And you nodded right there, Dave. Do you want to add some context to that? I think I know what he's saying, but I'd like to hear kind of your thoughts on, why can't we underestimate the utility value of ownership?
Right. Ownership gives you, it gives you, there's emotional value, right? There's social value. There's all sorts of fulfillment that you get. And I think that's what Bob's trying to say, right? When you own a card, when you send your money over to or trade some cards to acquire a card, just owning it itself gives you some sort of utility. There was function to it. And I do not think that should be underestimated. I'm quoting what Bob said. I'm saying this question back to him, but I completely agree.
Yeah, makes good sense for sure. Kurt Renault says, just joining after the NFL game, surprised to see another Iowan as a guest. Nonetheless, there you go. You guys are in close proximity. Simon 466 Cards, who will be our guest next Saturday on this show, says discussion about utility equals a discussion fit for an economist's heart. And we're going to have back-to-back, I'm sure, really interesting episodes with Simon 466 next Saturday here on the show, guys. Make sure to join us then. Okay. Mike Petty says, I've spent more than a month in both my grandparents' homes and the house I grew up in. Ouch. I am a collector. Yes, that is inflation. Yeah. It's not that hard to do these days. Okay, Dave, the next question, we did the rookie card. We did then what? We talked about the money. And now the last card, the last question. And this is the one that I think everybody could apply to themselves when you're building your own framework. And listen, some people in the chat have been collecting for years. You have your frameworks built. That's fine. You're just getting to hear some other ones here. But if you're somebody who is maybe struggling, perhaps, maybe you're buying too much. Maybe you're not buying enough. Maybe you don't like what you bought, right? Bob Hosta tore down his collection, I believe a big portion of it, and rebuilt it up. And he's happier than ever. He's got a whole system, tiered system and spreadsheets and all this stuff. You got to listen to that episode, guys, on the shallow end. But the last question that you're about to share with us and present to the audience, Dave, I think is one that everybody, here I am saying should and everybody again. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to say it's one that I'm going to start implementing into my personal collecting framework. Please, Dave.
Right. And I completely ripped this off from about 100 different people that I heard. It's not original, but the question is, would I buy this card if I wasn't allowed to sell it for 20 years?
Right.
Right. It's simple. I've heard so many others say it, and I just wanted to incorporate it into my own thinking. And it's just, you got to ask yourself, if you're stuck with this card, can you move, can you at the very least tolerate it?
Yeah, I think it's a good, if you were forced to not sell it for 20 years, would you still buy the card? And to me, Dave, that's a really easy question to answer, because unless I am buying cards just to put in my showcase at a show or to trade, which some I do that sometimes, I've always bought cards with the mindset of 20 years. How about 40 or 50? Like that's kind of been where I've been at until as I get older and the decades go by, that number comes down, of course, but that's where my mind has always been. So that's very natural to me. But I think, you need to kind of have a time horizon in mind and ask yourself, and whether it's, maybe it's 5 years for you, maybe it's this year, there's so many different approaches to the way people collect and transact within the hobby that I think, there's different ways. But I think it's an important question to ask yourself in whatever form makes the most sense to you.
100%. It's just so smart, right? And I'll just put it on myself, but I've made those mistakes where I've bought a card because I think that I should have it, or I think that I do like this set or whatever. And then, you hear the story that you open it, right? And this is before I was really sort of finding my what I like, and you open it and you think, where was I in the moment that I bought this? Because I don't like it now. And so just the reason that I came up with these 6 questions, or I didn't come up with all of them, right? The reason that I put these 6 questions together for myself is just to avoid those situations where I don't have any direction. Because since then I needed something. I needed to have something because I was just a kite in the wind. And that's just no way to collect. I wanted to have something that I could look at and see some sort of a cohesive message, a cohesive idea behind what I was doing. And I'm just much happier now since I've been doing that.
Well, I think if you are, you can have buyer's remorse when you purchase cards sometimes, right? Or anything for that matter. And I think buyer's remorse is going to make you feel worse. And so therefore less happy. And if you have a good framework in place, like 6 questions you ask yourself before you make a purchase. Now, listen, maybe you're buying cards for $5 or $10 or $20, and that doesn't mean much to you, and you don't need to go through the process. It's all going to be everyone's going to be different where you fall. I can buy cards for $10 or $20, and I'm not going to think too hard about it. But as soon as I'm spending a couple $100 or even $100, whatever it is, I'm going to put even $80. I might think a bit harder about it. And then if you're getting into the, closer to 1,000, the thousands, well, now I'm thinking about I have a whole other set of questions maybe that I'm asking myself, like how much do I really believe in this card, the player, how long do I want to hold it for, among maybe a few other things as well. So, okay, those are the 6 questions. We're going to go to a couple more comments, and then I'm going to touch on another episode you did, which kind of ties into this last question we had about the 20 years. OC Trust Attorney says, when I have finished collecting Mays McCovey and Juan Marichal, I will look to buy key baseball rookies from 1960 to 1980. These were the cards I wanted when I was a kid, but could not afford. I think that's, right? Exactly. That is a wonderful reason to collect. It's not because you should have rookie cards, those players. It's because you want the cards you couldn't afford when you were a kid and you did want them. I think that drives a lot of us today in being able to buy things we couldn't when we were younger, for sure. Jake Dahl says, I look at rookie cards as just another card. If I want it, great. If not, then oh well. There's other cards I like much better. I think that's a real liberating way of looking at it, for sure. Decoy Cards has just joined, but excited to play this back later. Glad I got here for at least one question. Welcome to the show, Decoy Cards. Mark Santucci, I like hockey, picked up a Bobby Orr card. Rogie Vachon, Brian Leach. I have no Gretzky rookies and no Gretzky cards. And that is fair. Okay. You did an episode that was titled, Should I Sell Everything? Should I sell everything? I listened to it. I didn't listen to it again, but I listened to it back when it came out. So you'll have to maybe remind me a little bit, but why were you even asking yourself the question?
So you hear the term grail thrown out all the time, and people say things, I got a grail card. What are your grails? And I don't want to get into the fight about that, but I will say that, if you believe the story, Jesus drank from a grail, right? He didn't have 17 cups that he was hoarding. So I have one grail card, and that card is the 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson. I love baseball. I love history. I've written a book on sports history, actually. And that is the card. It is the rookie card of one of the 2 most important baseball players ever. And it's him and Babe Ruth. But it's the one who I just respect more, who I can't even put it really into words. And to own that card would be the pinnacle of my collecting. And since I've been into the hobby, it's gone up and up and up. And so the question that I asked, which sort of bordered on one side, it was hypothetical, on the other side, it was very real, was should I just get rid of it all, get rid of everything that I own, and then get that card, but not get that card and then get out of the hobby, but get that card and then start over, knowing that I already have the card that is the most important to me, which it would be. Got some really, I was touched by how much feedback I got by people, some of it public, some of it private. Jeremy, you reached out, and Matthew 1956 cards reached out, and so many other people reached out. I ultimately decided not to do it, partially because I realized I just didn't even have enough, right? Even if I would have done it, I'd still be saving for a while. But also just because I enjoy the collecting side of it too much. And I didn't want to just have one card, even though by now, if I had done it, I would have had a few more by now, started to build back up. But that just seemed like the cornerstone. That seemed like what would have been the rock of my collection. If I had to pick one card and then I was booted out of the hobby, that would be the one card that I would, if I owned and I was out of the hobby, I would think, okay, I miss it. I miss the people. I miss the cards, but I have this, and this is not a card. This is a living piece of history.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So you talk, okay. I have a lot of thoughts going through my head here because there's some deep stuff there. When you have one grail, like you do, 48 leaf Jackie, if you were to move out everything, let's say you had enough, and then you pick up the Jackie, you start over. What are you going to start over with? Because you have the card you want the most. So now, is anything going to make? Are you going to kind of be? Are you going to be less satisfied and gratified with each card you get after that as you rebuild to the point where it's like, well, I got this Jackie. Nothing else is going to scratch that itch for me anymore. So I have a little bit of a concern about that. And then I think to myself, okay, if that's the case, then maybe we should have multiple grails. And grail is not, it's not even the right word technically, but because, there's one grail, let's say, but let's just be liberal here and say, maybe I should have several grails so that I do have something else that I can chase once I get my number one. Otherwise, I might get bored and disinterested, and maybe that's okay too. You have your one big card. Maybe I know one guy, he's got a collection worth millions, and he says he'll trade it all for one card. And I think to myself, you're crazy. Like all for one card, like thousands of, like I couldn't imagine having one card in my collection. I wouldn't consider myself a collector anymore. But that's fine. That's his choice, and I'm not going to judge. I judge it for me, not for him. It's like, no way could I do that, but go for it if that's you. That's fine. So I'm kind of like, I'm glad. I kind of glad you didn't do it, because I wonder where you'd be today. And maybe that would be interesting. Maybe you do it later. We'll follow up a year later and see what happened. But do you see what I mean? Like, what you get that one grail, is everything else going to be disappointing after that? It's kind of nice to always have something to strive for,
Yeah, and I think I would. I would still have lots of chase cards. It's just that every other card compared to that one seems less important, right? So it's not that. Obviously, I value the 59 Topps Bob Gibson. I value the 53 Satchel Paige. I value mentioned the 58 Aaron. Heck, I value the 2018 Ohtani, whichever one of the 1500 that you want, right? But I mean, he is a generational type player. But it's almost like it to me anyway. It's almost as if those cards and those they're less worthy than the 48 Jackie, and that once you can't build a house without the foundation, you can't grow a tree without the trunk, and that feels like the trunk. To me, that feels like where everything would grow out of. Where would I go once I got that? I like to think that I go back to some of the cards that I already have now. I just would not have the, let's use the right word. I would not have the anxiety that I might never own a Jackie. I could probably get close to one now if I just, again, wanted to sell everything off. And that might just provide some comfort in a way to me, that, okay, good. I've got the card. I got the most important card. Now let's have some fun, right? Now let's decorate that house, right? Now let's see those branches grow on that tree.
Yeah, you'd find ways, right? You'd find ways to keep interested and find other things that you'd want. JP says maybe around Mount Rushmore instead of Grail. Okay, so you're limited to 4. That's progress right there. He then says, or members of the round table. I'm not sure how many there are, 12 or 13. More progress right there. I like that thinking, JP. Mookie says, how about Crown Jewel instead of Grails? Lots of other jewels on the crown, but there's one crown jewel, bigger, better than I like that. I like all these ideas, guys, as far as ways to look at it. So yeah, I think that episode you did, guys, it was episode 14 of The Shallow End. That's Dave's podcast. And he talks about in more depth about the thought, the thought process about, consolidation and like, would you sell everything for one card? I know I certainly wouldn't, unless someone was making me a trade that I couldn't turn down, and now I could sell that card and get everything back and then some. But there's no way that I would be a happy person the day after trading all my cards for one card, even if that card is a Tito 06 Wagner or a PSA 10 52 Topps Mickey Mantle. Everything I've been building for 40 plus years. Now for one card that it's cool, but I'm only doing it for money at that point.
The only reason I would want a 52 Mantle would be to sell it. That's the only reason why, right? And same with the Wagner. Whenever I look at Mickey Mantle, all I think is, Mays was better. Yeah. But I think now, I'm glad. I think I'm glad I didn't attempt to do that. I might have some fun at the National. I don't have a lot of cards. I might throw them all into my box and just bring them and try it. There's only one card that I did not own at the time, but there's only one card that I think I would leave at home because I think giving it up would be too hard. I just acquired it a few weeks ago, so maybe it's sort of the shiny new thing. But yeah, I mean, why not? Part of swimming in the shallow end is the cards that were, if they're the cards in the aggregate that I would give up in order to get it if I actually found a dealer who would want, like, say, to acquire mine for inventory so that they could fill out their case again, maybe day 3 of National or something like that. The comfort of being on the end that I collect is that they could all basically be acquired again with time and with patience. Whereas at my current saving trajectory, if I were to really lock in on that 48 Jackie, I would not be getting anything for probably 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. Okay. All right. There was one question here. T-Dot was just asking, should there be a threshold of value to call yourself a collector, whatever sport? He says hockey, but it could be any. Absolutely not. Decoy agrees, says no, full stop. Perch says nope. Yeah, absolutely not. And you can have one card. In my opinion, you can have one card of a player and consider that a player PC. It might grow, it might not. Maybe 2. Maybe you need 2. I don't know, but there's no rules. I think that's the thing. You can call yourself a collector if you've got $10 worth of cards. I'm not going to argue with anybody about that. I mean, who am I to say what you are? That's only for you to say at that point. Something is really as simple as collecting. Okay, Dave, we're down to about 6 minutes left in the show. Last summer, end of the summer, you spent like 2 weeks. All you did was listen to content. I forget how long it was. What did you do and why did you do it and what happened? Tell that story.
Sure. So I listened to 62 hobby podcasts in 8 days, and that's not off the top of my head. I'm looking at it right now. It was 62 podcasts totaling just under 55 total hours. I did it because I wanted to see if I could do it. That was part of it. People ask me 2 things about each morning, right? Why I share everything every morning. And there's always 2 questions I get. One, why do you do it? And then I explain as a way of sort of saying thanks and making sure people stick around. But the other big question I get is do you listen to them all? And I'd say no. One is that I wouldn't possibly have the time. And 2 is I don't want to. But then I realized didn't really know the answer to that. Those were sort of my guessing answers. I said, well, I am a teacher. And so I haven't gone back to school yet. My wife's out of town on business. My kids are all working or in camps. Let's give it a shot. 1 week. Let's really see what happens for 1 week. And so that's why I did it as an experiment. It was awful. I will never do it again. But that's the reason that I did it. It's just to see what it would be like to listen to every single piece of hobby content that I could get my hands on for 1 week.
And you did an episode after it where you actually talked about each episode that you listened to, and you describe, and you talked about what you were thinking at the time. It was very interesting. It was very interesting, especially for someone like me whose name was mentioned a few times in the episode because you listened to a few of my podcasts. So along with it was great. Don't get, I'm not. It was very. I was flattered, of course, that you listened to my podcast in the first place. But that was interesting, and that's your commitment to your craft right there. Is that you were listening to as many as you could. Did listening to them help you with your own podcasting?
Oh my gosh, 100%, 100%. Because I realized certain things. Not that anybody does anything right or wrong. I just realized what my taste and my style is. For example, I'm not really into a lot of banter. Right? There are some shows where they have two hosts, and for the first 10 or 15 minutes, they're talking about like who knows what, like Star Trek movies or something. And I get so aggravated. I'm like, just get to the point. And so I realized with me, it's like, just start, just go. Which is why my show so often has cold openings with, I'll do the theme later. Sometimes I just want to start talking. I realized I don't mind shows that talk about current events or scams or scandals or whatever's going on, but I really appreciate the ones that do their research and are educated about it. And I always want to give a shout out to Let Me Get That Potograph with Drew and Scott. And right the week that I did that was the same week that Wanda Franco's legal troubles started. And there were a bunch of podcasts that I won't even talk about where they would talk about it, but it was just, you tell they had sort of just scanned ESPN for 5 seconds. And they would say, yeah, we know what he did was terrible. Let's talk about his card values. I'm like, let's not talk about his card values right now. And then Drew and Scott from Let Me Get That Potograph they sourced everything. They went through the research. They were so smart and professional about it that I thought, I'm not sure I want to be a current events guy, but if I ever am, I'm going to use them as an example.
Yeah,
myself.
Good. Yeah, I remember when I know Drew. We've been like podcast brothers for a while, and he was one of the first guys that ever invited me on a show to be a guest after I started mine. And when you talked about him, I messaged him right away. I said, hey, you got to go listen to Iowa Dave's podcast because he talks about you, and I think you're going to like it because you were very complimentary. Drew works really hard in the hobby. He's a dedicated hobbyist and podcaster. So I knew did he ever reach out? I just know that he was very grateful for that.
Drew did. Drew, his partner, reached out, and we had some nice back and forth.
Nice. That's very nice to hear. Okay, as we wrap up, 2024 is upon us. You've done so much for the podcast community. What do you plan? What any specific topics or strategy or plans you have for the Shallow End podcast as we roll into 2024 here?
Just sort of generically, I want to have a nice mix of shows where I just talk about whatever's going on with me, and then from now and then break it up with a guest. And I really want to bring in some guests who are thoughtful, who I enjoy following, and who aren't always making the rounds on all the shows. And so I'd like to bring people who are maybe shy or don't think that they have anything to offer, and to bring them into the conversation because they really have a lot more to offer than I think.
Good. Fair enough. Why don't you show us a few cards? I asked you to bring a few cards.
Yes.
Let's show the audience a couple of cards from your collection. As you do that, I want to thank you, T-Dot, for recognizing or at least telling me that I'm getting better at viewer engagement. Thank you, T-Dot. I appreciate that comment. Dave, let's see a couple cards from your collection.
Yeah, I have 3 cards here. The third card is going to be the grand finale. It's the one that I was talking about, the one that I recently sold 30 plus cards just to be able to get. I'll save that one for last. The first one is the 1992 Topps Gold Barry Bonds here. And one of the first parallels, it's hard to see with there, but you got the gold down there. I'm a big Barry Bonds fan. I find him relatable. And I maybe won't go into why, but I've always identified with him a lot with the I'm someone who likes credit sometimes. I sometimes let my ego get the best of me. And I fully understand why he started doing what he did. And the next card will sort of explain that. But I've always been a Bonds fan. He was the best before PEDs. He was the best after it. I like this card because we also forget that he was such an incredible fielder. He was also a great base runner. He was really the perfect player, I thought. And I love the gold. This is one of the first times that Topps put something this shiny on a card, and I think it was the beginning of a lot of what they were going to do over the next 30 years. So that was the first one that I picked out. Tied to that is this card. It's a 1999 Topps Chrome All-Etch Refractor of Mark McGwire. It's a Pop 7 on this card.
Show that again, and do this a bit so we can really
it's incredible. If pastel and neon can somehow mix into chrome refractors, this card did it. Beautiful card, and it's 99. I like 99 Mark McGwire's because 98 was the year that he hit the 70. What's interesting about this card is two things. One is on the back as it lists everybody who is in Club 40, which is everybody who hit 40 home runs in 98. Who is not on that list? Bonds. Because at the time, if you look at the 1998 All-Star game, they're all lining up, and you have all these hulks with their inflated muscles full of fluids from the PEDs that they're doing. Bonds hadn't started doing it yet. But that was the year that McGwire and Sosa had their chase, and you could just see the jealousy oozing out of him, which is why I find him so human, because he is who did everything right up to that point, and he was the best. And everybody else, shall we say, cheating, getting all the notoriety when he didn't do it. So I love that he's not on this card because he wasn't doing anything yet. And a couple years later, he's, breaking all sorts of records. Also with this card, I was at the card show in Des Moines, the Capital City Card Convention, which is one of the two major card shows in Iowa each year. I thought I was being so smart. I acquired this card, the Griffey as well for this version of PSA 9 plus some cash. And I sold off a 2019 It was a 2019 Ohtani Heritage out of 573 Chrome PSA 10. And he was coming off that great year in 2022. And I thought, now's the time to sell spring training. This is when you sell Ohtani cards, right? Never knowing that he was going to go up another notch. And if I had just waited 4 more months, that card would have gone up more. But it's hard to be too upset getting that card, getting that McGwire card, which is such a low pop. All right, grand finale. It's a 1954 Red Heart Stan Musial. Like I said before, I don't really think Musial has a rookie card. He just has a first card. He has the 48 leaf. He's got that black and white Bowman shot. But for me, his 54 Red Heart is my favorite card of his. It's the color match. It's so bright and vivid. And so I just got it in about a week and a half ago. Sold about 30 plus cards and put some other cash to go with it. And so here is this card.
Yeah.
The card,
so nice.
Yeah, the card is notoriously off center usually. And this one is not. I found one centered. And so it's just fantastic. It's a PSA.
Here, Dave, I'm just gonna shorten your name. Can you show it again so we can see the whole thing? I just want to really have a look. Now, is Red Heart, is that the dog food company?
It is. It's the dog food company. So there's only 20 or so cards or so.
It's a dog food card, guys. That's so cool.
It's the greatest.
If I recall correctly, one of the biggest cards you are after, I think in 2024, is also from that set. Is that right?
No, I would like a red Shandy's out of it.
I thought you were looking for the mantle. Didn't you say you wanted the mantle? No? Okay.
No, not really. I'm not really a mantle guy. I wouldn't mind putting the set together, and the mantle would have to be the other one. It's the only one with any real value.
When did you acquire the Musial?
About a week and a half ago.
Okay, so that must be what I'm thinking, because I was listening to a podcast where you said I'm going to get the Red Heart. I must have heard. Yeah.
And it was the Musial, right? And so that was the one that was high on my list. Thrilled to get it. I haven't bought anything since, right? I'm filling up the coffers again. But I just love having that card. It's Musial's best. And being from St. Louis, that was a dream card.
It's a beauty for sure, for sure. All right, well, I'm going to run through a few more comments here. We're going to wrap up, guys. So get your final comments into the chat. And Mark says Mark, you don't have to apologize for being late, buddy, but I appreciate you being here every Saturday night. Hope everything is well for you out east. Mark wants to know, Dave, do you have any 80s cards? Mattingly, Ripken, and Boggs. He wasn't here at the beginning of the show. We talked about that earlier, Mark, but you do, Dave, don't you?
I do. In fact, episode 1 of The Shallow End is about me finally picking up the 84 Don Mattingly. Yeah, I've got it.
And guys, again, Dave is on Instagram. He is, and I took your name off the screen there, but it's Iowa_Dave_sports cards. That's how you follow Dave Schwartz on Instagram. And of course, his podcast is called The Shallow End. And just look at the YouTube thumbnail for this video, and you'll see that it's the yellow ID logo. You can't miss it. And I'll tell you, like, I listen to some podcasts. I do. I don't know how many I listen to, but Dave's is one that he's the pretty much at the top of my list, guys, for ones that I enjoy listening to. So highly recommend you check out Dave's podcast. I don't think you'll regret it. I think you'll enjoy it. And they're a lot shorter than mine. So although you do go get up to an hour sometimes, don't you?
With a guest, I will, for sure.
With the guest. Dan's Vintage says, terrific show, gentlemen. A thinking man's collector like Dave is such an asset to the hobby. Well said, Dan. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Mookie says, one of the reasons I need these cards is because they are a passport into this great community. Thanks for an outstanding episode, Jeremy. Thank you, Mookie. And that's, I get that. I get that. I always say, you know, it's nice to build rapport with people. It's why we like each other, because we feel rapport. And I think rapport comes from having something in common. So when you are, you know, you run into somebody who's looking at their, if you're like, I don't know, you're on the bus or you're walking through the airport, you see somebody looking at cards. Are you not going to go up and say, hey, what are you doing? Like, you probably are. You know right away that you're probably going to be able to have a conversation and maybe get along with them because you have something in common. That's sort of instant rapport to a degree. Hobby Champs, you take care as well. Northern Lights Entertainment, thanks for joining us tonight. Yes, it is cold up north recently. Thank you, Professor, for being here. Says, need to hit the thumbs up on this great video. Only 8 so far. Thank you, Professor. Sure, guys, hit the thumbs up if you don't mind. Mike says, lots to think about after this episode. Great episode. Thank you very much, Mike. OC Trust Attorney is going to buy an 84 Donruss Mattingly because I remember it being the first card people went crazy for and had some level of scarcity and was notoriously hard to find well centered. I remember those days as well myself. Tom Bullard, just didn't update, Professor. It was like 28 likes. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Easier to understand terms when I was the 28th person to like it. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. Thanks for being here, Tom. All right, guys. Well, Dave, going to give you the final word, and then we are going to sign off for this episode of Sports Cards Live.
Jeremy, thanks for having me. I've had a really good time. I love talking cards. And to your audience, thank you so much. This is one of the best audiences anywhere in the hobby. So thank you, everyone, and take care.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Guys in the chat, guys and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you, Cardboard Corner. Appreciate that very much. Loves both shows. That's awesome. Guys, tomorrow night, I'll be back with Josh Madigan of the Hockey Cards Gong Show, where we will be talking about cards for sale on the PWCC Weekly Hockey. Always fun and educational. And then Monday night is the most action you'll find in the hobby on MC Mondays Live here, where we're going to be covering all the cards ending 1 minute apart. It's a ton of fun. Join me and Michael Hathaway from MC Sports Cards for that. And you got to check it out. It's a really fun show. Please join us. And again, next Saturday on Sports Cards Live, Simon466, The Economist, will be my guest. He's got a YouTube channel. Check it out as well. Always very, very thoughtful and analytical and data and presents very well. Perch, thank you so much, guys. And with that, everybody, this episode of Sports Cards Live is now